Good evening. Welcome to Elyria City Council meeting for Monday, April 17th, 2023. At this time, we'll take a moment of reflective silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Tollett, would you please lead us in the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The audience, I'd ask that if you could turn off your cell phones or put them on silent mode, that'd be great. Be appreciated. Mr. Clerk, can I have roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Callahan.
Here.
Mr. Sarah.
Here.
Mr. Oswald.
Here.
Mr. Corbin.
Here.
Mrs. Mitchell.
Here.
Mr. Tollett.
Here.
Mr. Lippian.
Here.
Mrs. Davis.
Here.
Mrs. Simmons.
Here.
Mr. Schneider.
Here.
Mr. Stewart.
Here.
All present.
Public hearings.
There are none.
Can I get approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Sarah.
Second.
Second by Mr. Snyder. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Remarks and reports from city officials. Mayor Whitfield.
Thank you, Council President. Good evening, City Council members. Good evening, residents and stakeholders. There's a lot going on, but in the city, and I'm going to let the staff speak more to that. But I really wanted to follow up on what we discussed a couple weeks ago when I'd asked for the additional time to be able to present to you some of the major investments that we need to make in the city. Talked about coming up with a process that engaged the residents in terms of getting their feedback on what they would like to see as a city. So I had a chance to talk with the finance director, and I wanted to share some of the projects that I shared with him that I think are relevant to not only the ARPA funds, but just overall the opportunity we have as a city. So Central Maintenance Garage, of course, is one of those, and one of the things we've been doing around CMG as I met with the staff is really talking about how can Central Maintenance Garage, how can this complex, this facility serve a greater good as well. And one of the things we talked about was Central Maintenance also being a training facility for us to not only upskill our employees, but also potentially upskill other municipal employees from other cities as well as residents as well. You know, that project was in the teens of millions. With the fluctuation with inflation, that could potentially be up to $17 million. But, that's part of what that due diligence process would be going through and really getting some hard numbers to bring to you all. We've also, as you heard before, we talked about a fire station on the southeast side of town, in particular with the growth that's happening in the Chestnut Commons area, the need to have some coverage there. So either a satellite station for both police and fire, but some sort of safety site for the residents and the businesses in that area. Fire truck was already approved. Rebuilding of our pool. So as you've heard some of the discussions that happened at the Parks Board meeting, we have pools that need either upgraded. Our expert, Pat Hoagland, the son of Charles Hoagland, who's one of our rec centers is named after, has made the recommendation to us for about 8 years now that we need to create a centralized pool and one that's good, that can serve the whole city, as opposed to what he calls these rectangle bathtubs that we have right now. The evidence building for the police station, as you've heard before, they're currently leasing space and would like to have their own evidence building. The Oakwood roof and windows, again, we acquired this school building with the opportunity we've presented to you all around converting this into a youth and senior center. We recognize some of the presentations that were presented in the past were kind of, you weren't given all the information that was needed, the accurate information. So we think that that's important to revisit that conversation and really get real hard numbers again on what it would take to replace that roof and windows, to be able to serve our youth and serve our residents. Downtown, as many folks have seen, we need to stimulate the growth downtown. So part of what we would be proposing is to look at potentially doubling or expanding on our current programs that we have for people to rehab buildings, rehab facades. Right now, we've matched 50-50 up to $50,000. And in discussions with some of the property owners downtown, we think it might be a great opportunity to incentivize further, to say, hey, let's go up to 100,000. You do 100K, we'll do 100K, really to get people off the fence downtown so they can start investing in their properties. With the home beautification program, you've seen we've gotten great response from the community. We originally requested $500,000. $250,000 was approved. As you can see, there's a demand and a need out there in the city. So I'd like to see that program bumped up to at least $1 million between multiple different funds. The ARPA funds limit who can be served, but as the finance director has mentioned in the past, there's other buckets of funds that we can put into this program. Community violence prevention, as you may have seen, we recently, in partnership with the city of Lorain, we received a community violence prevention grant. It's still not enough to really get us through the next 2 years of exploring this. I'll say this on the record. Today, I have a huge concern about the proliferation of guns in our community. I've had the chance to work alongside EPD on some of these cases, and we have a serious problem, and we are swimming upstream when it comes to gun violence. And I can't speak enough about how even the work that we're going to do, even the work that we're currently doing, to try to keep young people away from guns, keep them from resulting to violence in these instances, we are swimming upstream because there's so many guns in in America, period, not just unique to Elyria, that we need to do the top work, the uphill work of addressing the policy issues like this permitless carry and all this stuff that's happening at the state, as well as doing what we can here in the city of Elyria to keep our young people from seeing that as a tool to resort to in conflict. Next one is the senior utility relief. So I've been working with Councilwoman Davis on this. Again, we think this is an opportunity to put ARPA funds into this to make sure that our seniors can receive a discount for the utility rates as they're dealing with other increased costs. As you approve, I think tonight is on the agenda for Black and Veatch, or it might have already been approved, for them to assist us with creating a long-term program for also low-income individuals. We've had several organizations come here from nonprofit space asking for resources to help them serve our residents. We think that's still a need out there that we should consider and address. The trucks is one of the needs, the sanitation trucks, which I see that that's being discussed. Road resurfacing, we've put money into that. The Parks Master Plan, which should be coming to you in the next 30 days to approve. That master plan is supposed to be a guide for our decision-making with our funding. So that's an area where not only ARPA funds, but Issue 6 funds and potentially financing some projects. And then there's some smaller things like lighting downtown, cameras downtown, that we've heard residents say that in cleaning up and having resources to clean up downtown. Those are things that we've heard that we think resources need to be put into. So we got this kind of overall grand picture of things that, again, my goal was to present this to you. Because what I've heard when I've presented things in the past, we need more information. So I wanted to make sure I got as much information as I could before I presented it. And some of these we would recommend financing for them, and then some of them we'd recommend ARPA, some of them Issue 6, some of them water. But that is the plan to present that to you all. So I guess my referral to you all is to have a discussion on these items in an upcoming committee meeting to dive deep into these projects. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. When do you think you'll be ready to make this presentation?
Yeah, it's interesting because I can be ready by the next committee meeting. I've seen some of the things that got approved without any of these details. So if y'all are willing to do that, I can bring it at the next committee meeting.
Okay. Well, with that being said, I would say that would be, we'll do a joint referral for the community development. Once that comes through and we do our referrals, we'll make an adding that to the mayor's presentation. Okay. Any questions for the mayor based on his comments regarding? Thank you, Mayor. Safety Service Director, Mr. Lundy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just wanted to advise you we'll be doing some spring cleanup of sorts downtown. Next Monday and Thursday, we'll launch crews to clean up the downtown area. We'll divide into two crews, one starting near the Muni Court, working east, another crew starting around the Dollar General and heading west. We'll get the side streets such as Kerstetter Way, Washington, down to the railroad overpasses, and then we'll converge onto the square. We'll launch this bright and early in the morning at 5 a.m., and we'll be doing that from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. Both days. This is going to be a team approach with workers from streets, parks, and cemetery taking part. The plan is to do this on a weekly basis through the end of the month in September. Also want to thank the many department heads who participated in our city job fair on Friday. It was a big success. Busy 4 hours. We did that from 3 until 7 o'clock on Friday, where the department heads got the opportunity to interview the candidates. The candidates had a chance to actually hear directly from the department heads on how those departments run. I want to thank HR Director Gene Yousefi, also Assistant Safety Service Director Tim Williams, for putting this all together for us. And that completes my report.
Very good, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Lundy? Okay, thank you, Mr. Lundy. Finance Director Plesky.
No report at this time, Mr. President.
Any questions? Mr. Lippian?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President. Finance Director Pileski, I figured this might be a question you could help answer. I've gotten some residents, many residents actually have reached out to me asking about a letter in the mail from NOPEC Gas and Electric Company that auto-opts them in, and they wanted me to ask the question why they're being auto-opted in. And if you're not the best person to answer the question, maybe somebody else can.
Go ahead, Phil.
So, and please, I am not an expert on this. Matt, I'll let you jump into it when I'm done, but it's something that we have to, Safety Service Director Lundy, something we all have to be very, very, very careful with. NOPEC gives us the choice to pick who we want for our gas and electric services. Every resident can go to the apples to apples comparison on the State of Ohio website. All you do is type in Ohio gas and electric, apples to apples, or apples to apples, it will come up for you. It's extremely, when the utilities were deregulated in Ohio, NOPEC was that broadliner for deregulation. Everybody has to be extremely careful. My in-laws are both in their mid-80s. They saw a very cheap rate, didn't realize that it was a variable rate, and on top of that, they added $1 a day to their either gas or electric bill for managing that. So it added $30 a month on top. So I recommend everybody who shops this. First Energy, because of all the litigation and lawsuits, has already announced that it looks like electric is going to double in price by June 1st. So I highly recommend everybody going into that program and picking an electric carrier to deliver your service to you before June 1st. So I'll let Safety Service Director Lundy address that even more, because I'm not an expert at it, but I've kind of dug into it a little bit. I'll turn it over to Safety Service Director Lundy.
Yeah, I certainly don't want to be perceived as an expert by any means, but I think you covered the terrain pretty good. I mean, right now we are being serviced by NOPEC, but when you ask the question about opting out, I mean, that's something that the legislature had put forth and the state had put forth. So individuals have the opportunity, obviously, to opt out of that. But even if we were to, at some point, if a determination was made to change anything with NOPEC, that would take some time to do. What we would like to do is have NOPEC come in and probably present to council, the program, and then you can hear directly from them what's going on with NOPEC. I think that would be the best way to be informative. I don't claim to be an expert on it, but it obviously would take a little bit of a process if the city decided to change its mind on it. But I think NOPEC should at least have the opportunity to come in and present present its case.
Mr. Lipia? Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you. Mr. President, through you, it's very important for the residents to understand, if you don't want NOPEC, you have to opt out. You have to make a phone call or send back that little card that they sent you in the mail. If you do not opt out, you are a member of NOPEC. So it's very, very important. I tried calling, I was caller number 300 and something, and they said the wait was over 2 hours. I wasn't going to wait. So just so keep that in mind, but you have to opt out. Thank you, Mr. President.
Law Director Deary?
Thank you, through you, Mr. President. So, Elyria is an NOPEC community. Many, many years ago, when NOPEC was created, Elyria was one of the opt-in communities. I'm not going to try to explain all the intricacies. I'm not an expert in the matter either, but that is why residents are automatically opted in. However, by law, each resident does have the ability to opt out, and so that is why everyone is, including myself, every household is getting, every customer, I should say, is getting those notifications. And obviously, NOPEC's been in the news quite a bit, so it's a hot topic, and that's probably why Mr. Lippi and you, and I'm sure many of your colleagues are getting those calls as well. So I would obviously encourage everyone to take a look at it and study it to the best of your ability. And you're able to make those changes quite frequently. So it's not a once a year or things like that. So
Mr. Lipia?
that's all I have to say.
Mr. Lipia, did you have, or no? Okay. Mr. Tolet?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just so you know, you can make the changes. You can lock in. There are some that you can lock in at today's low gas rates. Gas is fairly low. You can actually save off the current Columbia rate, and you can lock in up to 24 months at a lower rate than you're getting right now. The same with electric. You can lock in at today's rates for 6 months, 12 months, up to 24 months, or you can go on variable. I'm not an expert. Don't take this advice. I would not go to a variable rate because First Energy has announced 100% increase coming June 1st. So thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Lippian?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President. I'm glad I asked the question. It generated a lot of good conversation. Definitely residents are curious and some upset, so I'm glad we were able to give them some feedback on that, and hopefully everybody's able to make the best choice for them and their families.
Yep. And just to kind of dovetail on that, Mr. Lundy, if you would have an outreach, or to the administration have an outreach to those groups so that we can kind of get some more information there for our residents. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? Law Director Deary.
Through you, Mr. President, I have no report at this time. Thank you.
Any questions for Law Director Deary? No. Leader Police Department, Chief Pelko.
Good evening, Mr. President, council members. So I just wanted to bring to light, I know there was a lot of concerns about the helicopter flying overhead this past weekend. So what we did is we reached out to the Ohio State Patrol and did a saturated patrol event on Thursday and Friday in collaboration with them. We were targeting some of the higher crime areas of the city. Overall, we made almost 84 contacts with citizens. We had 6 arrests, 3 for drugs, 1 we recovered a firearm. And we gave 29 verbal warnings to people that we were in contact with. So overall, I think it was a success, and we plan on doing something with them in the future. We didn't know at first that they were going to bring in the helicopter, but they brought in the helicopter for some aerial support, and we ended up using them from chasing some four-wheelers and dirt bikes around the city. So it was very helpful to have the helicopter. So we'd like to thank the OSP for collaborating with us on that. Any questions on that?
Mr. Oswald.
Through you, Mr. President. Chief, did that cost us anything?
Well, I paid some of my officers overtime, but it didn't cost us anything to use the helicopter or the Ohio State Patrol.
Oh, very good.
With that said,
Chief, before you move on, Mr.
Oh, I'm
Lippian, did
sorry.
you want to make, okay. Mr. Polk, go ahead, Chief.
all right, through you, Mr. President, so 1825 Lorraine Boulevard, that's the old Days Inn. We got some information that some people were staying at there. Eventually, we were able to track down the people that were in there. There were, in fact, some people staying in there. We reached out to the fire department, building department, collaborated with them, had them come in and do some inspections. The building's atrocious, it's non-livable. Building department and fire department are doing some investigations into that. We kicked the people out, we talked with the owner, and hopefully we can get some resolution to keeping that building secure. So, wanted to inform you of that. I also want to inform you, May 1st, I'm going to start a traffic detail at the police department. I'm going to assign 2 officers to strictly do traffic patrol throughout the city. So, we'll be out there during busy hours, and those 2 officers will be solely dedicated to just running traffic enforcement. Last thing I have is Rick Walker. He'll be retiring. He's one of our officers. He's been with the department over 30 years. He'll be retiring April 28th. We'll have a celebration for him at noon on that day. Everybody is welcome to come and wish him the best of luck in his retirement. And with that said, I have 2 referrals from the floor. I would like to make a referral to purchase up to 25 more body cameras and licenses. We originally purchased it only 75, but we see a need that we're potentially going to need more, and I'm still waiting for the quote for that. And I would also like to make a referral to apply and accept the Project Safe Neighborhood Grant. That's a grant we apply for every year. Last year we awarded $17,000. That's in collaboration with the NOVCC, which is the 7 major police departments in northern Ohio that collaborate together to help reduce gun violence. So with that said, I'll entertain any other questions.
Any questions for the chief based on his comments? Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. President, through you, not a question, but a comment. I am extremely happy about the traffic detail. I know, I got on your nerves.
You're in the back of my head.
I know I did, but so thank you. Thank you very much.
Very good. Any other questions for the chief? Ms. Davis?
Through you, Chair. I'm extremely happy about you looking into Holiday Inn. I have been watching that building. I go by there so many times a day just to watch. And you can see that they're tearing off the lower part of the wood that you put up. They tear it right off. And that's what they do. And I expect for them to do that. But I'm so afraid that it'll go up in flames anytime. If you don't have any heat, what you going to do? Like today, you're going to start a fire on the inside. So watching it close, I appreciate you. Thank you for it. And let us continue to see if we can shut that area down.
Thank you, and that's one of our main concerns. Is last thing we want to see is somebody die inside of there. So,
Right. Mr. Sarah?
Through you, Mr. President, so with the traffic detail coming up, what's the hope of any kind of a foot patrol or beat cop back downtown at some point in time?
and I give you traffic patrol, and now you want foot patrol, man, you're killing me. Listen, I would love to have foot patrol downtown, foot patrol all over the place. I know I say it, I'm understaffed. I actually got 73 officers working the road right now. I'm at 85, but I got some guys hurt. I've got 7 guys in the training program who are getting trained. I need help trying to recruit people. If whatever you guys can do to help me try and recruit people to come work at the police department would be great. I know I got 2 guys on Westlake's list. I got another guy who's thinking about going to Huron County because that's where he's from. So I'm open to any ideas and suggestions on how we can recruit some more people. We've been trying everything. Last meeting, I told you we hired Dana Linden part-time to try and help market the police department. We're going to be giving a lateral test here in May to try and recruit some lateral officers. So whatever you can do to get the word out there. We're going to job fairs. There's a job fair this weekend at LCC that we're going to. And I think there's another one in the end of May that we're going to be going to try and recruit officers too. But it's just not a problem with the Elyria Police Department. It's a problem with the police departments all over the nation that they're having trouble recruiting officers. So whatever you guys can do to try and help me recruit officers, I'm all ears. So.
Don't, through you, Mr. President, don't misunderstand. It's not a slam on the department. I think you guys are doing an awesome job, but I just wanted to make sure that we're still on the radar.
Yep, you are.
Thank you.
Mr. Oswald?
Through you, Mr. President, and if I get this wrong, let me know. But I was really surprised when we had our conversation and you were explaining to me that you have 7 patrol officers per shift. And so 6 of them have certain areas and you have a floater. And so I'm thinking of in an 8-hour shift, and we're 7 wards. So that means we only have like 1 patrol per ward. It doesn't seem like Howard Delaney. And then if you have an incident, you're calling off from some of them other guys that come. And for as few guys out there, it seems like you guys are doing one heck of a job. I guess I never realized. I figured there'd be more people out there. And so I just want to say thanks. They're probably doing a good job. We know we got some issues, you know, but we'll get them.
I got a bunch of hardworking officers. I commend them. They work their butts off and they do a lot of work. And they do. They're a busy group of guys and they do what they can.
Mr. Lippian?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President. Hearing the police chief talk about the recruitment issues the police department is experiencing reminds me of another organization that's experiencing recruiting problems as well, which is the U.S. military. And one of the ways that they've decided to help reverse that negative recruitment flow is to start offering bonuses or small incentives to military members that successfully refer a recruit that makes it all the way through training and gets into the military. They call it Weird Days. We are all recruiters. And basically, if you meet somebody, you say, hey, contact the military, you sign your name down there, you send that over, the recruiter will get that and they will credit your name to it. And if that person makes it all the way through training, they'll receive a small stipend of $300, $400. It can be an incentive to remind the police officers that every individual officer is a recruiter because they stand for something larger than themselves and they represent Elyria wherever they go. So if it's possible for us to try and take something that seems to be successful somewhere else and find that there's a way to make the shoe fit in Elyria, and if there's some funds that could be dedicated to it, I'd be interested to see what my colleagues think as an idea.
Thank you, Mr. Lippian. The chief made 2 referrals. If we can have those, you know, the information supplied, chief, to them to get them on the referral list. Chief, I think Mr. Lippian has one more question.
Sorry.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President. I was waiting to see if there were any questions. Maybe that's a conversation we can continue to have going to the next meeting. But I did have some things I wanted to say, Chief. Being in a leadership position, sometimes, you know, you hear a lot of complaints, but you don't always hear enough praise. And I wanted to get this opportunity to congratulate you and your department on the successful apprehension of the Cambridge shooter. That was an extraordinary effort with your department and the U.S. Marshals, and it made our streets safer. So when the police department does great work, I definitely want to praise you guys because it's extraordinary what you were able to do. And I also would like to congratulate Officer Brown, who I saw enforcing traffic patrol in Eastern Heights by the Eastern Heights School, who, by the way, is a member of the National Guard. He's an officer there as well. So it's so important to remember we have multiple dimensions to the people who serve our city. And Chief, as you're looking at the traffic patrol unit, if issue 8 passes, which I certainly hope that it does, and we have much needed renewals for our police and fire department, I hope we can look into getting a traffic patrol car with some ghost riding on it that can help us enforce that.
So that's actually in the works. I've got 2 cars right now that are getting set up for that. So that is in the process as we speak. So I think we're waiting on light bars for them, so.
Thank you. Any other questions for Chief Palco? Thank you, Chief. Elyria Fire Department, Chief Pernesti.
Good evening. Just a few things. First, some good news, and then the rest is all bad. But no, not like that. Not like that. The good news is we had with COVID, we had stopped a lot of tours and a good PR opportunity to come to our stations, talk to our firefighters. And we had a group of Girl Scouts come through last week on Friday. It was nice to see my younger members who hadn't had an opportunity to do these things get the opportunity. So I'd like to invite citizens, or we can start these things back up again to get out into the community. And along with that, a little segue, I'm very unfortunate. We had another fatal fire on Easter Sunday. It was a very hot, intense fire. The construction of the house, it's called balloon frame. It's an old legacy style construction, but what it basically means is there's no fire stops. And the fire was running through the walls, and we had a very difficult time getting in and conducting a search. I myself even packed up, went inside, a very difficult time. It was some pretty intense heat that even in my career hadn't felt that in a long time. Unfortunately, it leads to a problem that I think we have in this city of we need to do better. Spoke to the mayor today. We're going to try to put a program, a legit program together as far as smoke detectors in the community. I do not believe, I'm about 90% sure that there was no smoke detectors on Gates Avenue, and the fire had an incredible head start for 8 o'clock in the morning. It's still under investigation, but when you look back at our fatals that we've had, and you know, I became chief in July, August of 2021, we've had 8 fatal fires, and that's a lot. And most of those fatal fires did not have smoke detectors, so or smoke detectors that might have been vandalized when we had the fatal fires in multi-residency dwellings. So we're going to be really hitting that hard, and we're going to try. We utilize the public as much as possible for ideas, for help, but we need to get a program together. We also had a week before, we had a somewhat difficult rescue in Cascade Park that I'm very proud of, went off very well. It's summer. Again, I mentioned that we at our last meeting about that. We are going to do some more training in the park. Just be careful. And a couple other things. I have a retirement coming up that I'm going to probably be asking finance to look at my budget to replace that person. It was unanticipated, his retirement, so it was unplanned. So I'll be talking to that. And then I'm sure you know that there were some issues with Lorain County 911, their leadership, and the county EMA. I would like to tell you that I am, first off, very disappointed in what is taking place. We have a good working relationship with Lorain County 911. They are our dispatch. They are our nerve center. And their director, Mr. Young, does a phenomenal job of leading that department. It's a safety service. I'm not sure what the future holds. I am pessimistic about it. I'm a little nervous, I should say. I have some trepidation because Jeff was such a good leader, and a lot of the fire chiefs feel like he probably shouldn't have been let go, but we'll see what happens. The EMA director quit, and one of the other things I was very upset about, that no one from the county sent anything to the fire chiefs saying that the director quit and this is who is in charge. We're just to assume that all the other employee there is to take on. It's a chaotic time, and we're trying to do the best we can, but I just wanted to let you know I'm somewhat disappointed, as are the other fire chiefs, of what is happening in the county. It's not a good thing. That's about all I have. I'll take some questions if you have them.
Mr. Cira?
Through you, Mr. President, on the good side, didn't you miss a birth or something?
Oh, thank you. See? It's my problem, too negative. Now, we delivered, it has been years since we have had to do an emergency childbirth in the fire department. And it's kind of poetic in a way that it happened hours before our tragic fire, that the members who were at that fire earlier delivered a baby boy on Washington Avenue. So that makes me happy. We will be giving them, in the fire service or EMS, they give out little stork pins, pink for female, blue for male. So we're going to give those to those 3 gentlemen that were that delivered that baby, and I'll have some recognition and commendation for them, because as well as you're trained for it, you just don't expect it, especially at 6 o'clock in the morning. But they did a heck of a job. I'm proud of them. Thank you for that. I appreciate
Thank you, guys.
that. Anything else?
Mr. Oswald.
Through you, Mr. President, you mentioned something that most people have never even heard the word, but balloon framing. Okay, so of course, I know construction of homes, you know, a balloon frame house will go up like that, a 2-story. Do your guys, like in your training, when you go through this, understand and know construction of homes when they have to know how to fight that fire because of the way it's constructed? Thank you.
We have a saying in the fire service, know the building is the enemy, and the building is your enemy when it's under fire conditions. We are very well trained. I speak on it in my off time around the nation. It's kind of like my own little personal thing. So my firemen are very well versed. When you become an Elyria fireman, you're baptized in fighting fires in balloon frame dwellings because we are a legacy town. So we are very, very astute on that. It's just they're predominantly in the south end because that is our older section. But my men and my commanders are very well versed because that's what we cut our teeth on, and that's our bread and butter house fire.
Good. Any other questions for the chief? Thank you, Chief. Assistant Safety Service Director, Ms. Calvert.
Thank you. Good evening. Through you, Mr. President, I am once again up here to remind everybody about the comprehensive plan that the city is doing. The survey is still open, so anyone who hasn't taken it, please do. It's at ourelyria.com. It's a quick, brief survey for anyone who lives, visits, cares about Elyria and its future, so that we can get some good input and data on what the community would like to see. City council members, you should have received a workbook that is a little bit more in-depth survey that we are requesting your input on, your feedback, and, you know, based on your work with your constituents and the work that you do here at City Council, we want to make sure that we have that input to incorporate. So the survey will be closing in the next few weeks, so this really is the opportunity to give as much feedback as you can. Our consultants, MS consultants, will be at different events throughout the summer, but that's going to be more focused based on the information they've received. So what the next step is, they've done an existing conditions report that we'll put in front of our steering committee, and they'll incorporate that existing conditions report with the survey data that they've collected, and we really begin to formulate our plan for what the future is going to look like. So these last few weeks to get that survey data in is really important. So we're going to be doing a social media blast, so look for that in the next couple of days, and if you can repost and reshare it, we would be very appreciative.
Any questions for Ms. Calvert? Thank you, Ms. Calvert. Assistant Safety Service Director, Mr. Williams.
Good evening, through you, Mr. Chair. On this evening, we have Macaulay and Company here with us. As per request, they will come and make quarterly reports. And so Justin Macaulay and members of his team are here. So this time I'm going to ask them to come forward on behalf of my report, and they'll have a brief presentation for you all. This is a company who is responsible for the grant writing and they've been very successful in terms of supporting the city of Elyria in our acquisition of grants. The latest, as you may have heard, a joint grant application for the city of Lorain, the city of Elyria, and the Lorain County Urban League, in excess of $600,000 was just awarded this week for violence prevention, and of course they were instrumental in that application as well as others, but they will share some information with you about the work they've been doing on behalf of the city of Elyria.
Okay, very good. Welcome, Mr. McCall and your team. Please state your name and address for the record.
Sure. Justin McCauley, 19660 Rosalind Drive, Rocky River, 44116. Thank you, Mr. President. Good to see everybody. Thank you for having us back. I think the last few times I've been here, I've come solo. This time I have brought a couple of the key folks who work on the Elyria account with me, Shannon Strachan and Sean Lowe behind me here. I'm going to turn it over to them in a moment and let them provide just a couple of high points on things that we've been working on since last I was here in December. This is our first quarterly update since Mr. President asked for these regular visits back in December, and we've also been producing monthly reports with additional detail as Mr. Tollett had requested back in December, and providing those to the administration. And we've been busy. A number of proposals written, several more in the hopper that we're working on, and a couple of wins. So let me turn it over to Shannon and let her provide an update.
Good evening, Mr. President and Council. Over the last couple months, we meet probably, I guess, regularly twice a month with administration, and then several meetings with the administration staff throughout the month. Over the last couple months, we've submitted grants, an AFG grant. There were two of those, one for radios, one for a rescue truck. We worked with engineering on a Safe Routes to School grant. OEPA, we had a leaf vacuum grant, and then several earmarks, which my colleague Sean will talk about. We've had some awards this year. You heard about the Community Violence Reduction Grant. We had the TLCI Implementation Grant. Let's see, there a small bike helmet grant, ARPA First Responder Wellness Program, Safe Streets for All. That was a Lorain County Public Health grant that will allow the city of Elyria to participate in that planning. In that planning, we can identify several projects for safety for multimodal transportation, and there's implementation grants over the next few years at $1 billion a year, where we can submit those implementation projects on behalf of Elyria. So really important for us to participate, and I guess kudos to Lorain County Public Health to partner with the communities to apply for that grant. We've had a NatureWorks grant, and then a Nord Family Foundation grant where we were a partner with Lorain County Urban League as well. There is some extra funding also for that Community Violence Serving Our Streets program. We are currently working on, let's see, I don't remember the acronym, a CMAQ grant with NOACA, which is a community, let me get the right words for you. I think it might be on your agenda tonight. A Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Program grant. We have an EECBG program that we're working on right now, which is the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant. That is a formula program, which we have, I think, $115,000 formula grant for Elyria. We have the NOPEC NEC grants. Been working with we're working on water grants, nothing specific, but looking for grants to match with some of our grant projects. And talking with police about a cops hiring grant. And then there's a couple of training grants with fire that are in the hopper as well.
So with all these grants that are out there, is it something that you're coordinating with, say, for example, the Elyria Police Department or the Elyria Fire Department? You're in constant contact with them, or how does it?
Absolutely.
What is that process like?
Yeah, so we send out, I guess, every week we review grants at the state and federal level, and then we pick out grants that we think are appropriate for Elyria. We send them to the administration. The administration submits them out to the members of his different members, and so then we would follow up with either the police chief, fire chief, parks, or engineering, and talk about those grants and whether they have a project that matches. So yeah, we're in constant contact. You know, we have those 2 meetings a month, but we're really in constant contact throughout the whole month, talking to everybody about these grants.
Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Lippian?
Through you, Mr. President. Thank you, ma'am. Do you know if ODOT's voted on the Safe Routes to School grant yet?
I'm sorry?
Do you know if they've voted yet on the Safe Routes to School grant? On our application?
I have not heard anything yet, so no, they have not.
Because if they haven't, I know that Representative Manning has said that she would write a letter of support for our grant. So if it's not too late yet, I know she wrote one last year, but it came in after they had voted. So if you're able to follow up with her and get that and send it over, it could be helpful.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions on being presented there tonight? Is there someone, okay, good.
Yes, I think Sean Lowe had some just updates about the earmark process that we also.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of council. In addition to the traditional grant writing process, Macaulay and Company also supports the administration in a government relations capacity, representing the city to state officials and, of course, the federal government. Back in early February, we had brought Senator J.D. Vance's Northeast Ohio director to meet with the administration to make sure our new senator is familiar with the city of Elyria and ensure we have an open dialogue there should we need to engage the senator's office for any assistance on the federal level. Throughout Q1, Macaulay and Company had kept track of the federal appropriations process. So through the federal appropriations process, the annual budget bill through the federal government, members of Congress can earmark specific projects into the federal budget for local governments and nonprofits. With the control shifting to Republicans in the House of Representatives, there were some new requirements that they had instituted on the earmark process, which you may be more familiar with that terminology. And that posed some new challenges in reviewing those processes and making sure our project was a fit. So we worked with the mayor's office, the city engineer, and again identified the Southeast Sewer Interceptor extension as the project that we submitted to Congressman Latta and Senator Sherrod Brown's office for their consideration. The good news there is that Congressman Latta has put forward that project for $2.5 million as one of his top 15 projects, which then moves it to the next stage in the deliberation process that the House of Representatives deals with in selecting which projects are then ultimately funded. So that's kind of the first step. In June or so, we would see if we've made it to the next step, and then perhaps in December, the House of Representatives and the Senate should come together to pass a budget, and then we would see then if the Elyria project is included and then funded through that process. We worked with the mayor's office on garnering letters of support for that request, which is key in making sure that community members, nonprofits, other stakeholders are in support of these projects that are submitted to the U.S. Congress for their review and consideration. So that's kind of where we are in that front.
Very good. Any questions there? All right. So, Mr. McCauley, is there a way, we appreciate you coming up and giving us an initial report. Is there a way that we can get some type of, through the administration, bullet points on what has been presented here tonight, what grants you're going after, the line items that you have? Just something, simplistic across the board, just so we can see what's out there for us that
absolutely.
You're working on.
Sure. Yep.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions for the McCauley Group? All right. I appreciate you coming up. Thank you for listening to our wishes, and good luck in all the endeavors that you got over there.
Thank you for having us. Good to see you.
All right. Thank you. Engineering Department, City Engineer, Ms. McKillips.
Good evening, through you, Mr. President. I just want to state that congratulations to council for compiling your 2023 street resurfacing list and getting the additional funding for this year. I also want to thank Engineer Schneider and Mr. Forthover for the work that they put together for this year's program, the time that Mr. Forthover spent with the ride-along and the support from Engineer Schneider. It's been very valuable. And Engineer Dietz will be moving forward with getting the plans put together so we can get this project bid out as soon as possible. I also just want to quick mention that the Cleveland Street Waterline project, the waterline work is about 2 weeks. Now, this is just the waterline work, just the underground work is about 2 weeks away from being completed. So within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we can look forward to the restoration process starting. So that's basically putting back new curbs, sidewalks, pavement. So that's exciting to see that process moving forward and moving as quickly as it has. The East Side Relief Sewer, that process, the progress on that project, it's moving forward. It's moving slow, but the work on Poplar Street continues to move towards St. Jude School. And on Gulf Road, we're working to move south towards Ohio Street. And talking with Councilman Sarah prior to the meeting, we're currently waiting for utilities to be relocated on East Bridge Street, which is why we haven't started digging there between Smitty's Place and the BP gas station. As soon as we get those utilities moved out of the way, we'll get the crew that's on Gulf Road currently into that position. That's where we need to build a big chamber so that we can get our big sewer basically through 109-inch storm sewer that crosses East Bridge Street at that location. Other than that, I just want to remind residents that on the city's website, on the homepage, there is a link to our traffic and construction map. Basically depicts where the big construction projects are. That's just a reminder. Other than that, that's all I have.
Any questions for Ms. McClips? Mr. Sarah?
Through you, Mr. President, so this delay, you think we're looking at weeks, months, or year?
We are hoping, well, we've already delayed going on 2 months, but I think we may be looking at another month, maybe 2. We heard that Windstream has got, their engineering department's got the okay from their higher-ups to move forward with planning the work. Once that gets planned, it's the construction division that'll need to get their work completed, and we're hoping that they're willing to actually hire an outside contractor to do the work so we can get on it right away.
I just pray that it doesn't turn out to be another situation like in North Ridgeville. Because I think that was like a year long or better.
Yeah, I hope so. We're in constant contact with Windstream, and they understand the urgency that we have at this location. Right now, they're moving and planning for the work that they have to do on East Broad Street because they're behind on that project as well. So once they got that project in place, that they're going to jump on this one. So hopefully we're only within a couple months.
So on the East Bridge end of it, at one point, would it start to affect the ODOT program coming down Cleveland Street, East Bridge?
It possibly could if we extend this beyond, let's say, a few months. Because once we get to that location and start excavating, get the shoring in, and then get the structure
construction started, that in itself is probably a 5 to 6 month process. So we do need to get moving on it. I don't think it's going to cause too much of an issue with Cleveland Street, but, you know, we'll have to see how that plays out.
Thank you. One other question, if you don't mind, Mr. President. Water main work on Wesley, that was out being planned. What's the status on that?
We're reviewing the 99% plans right now.
Thank you.
Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Thank you to Mr. Snyder and Mr. Forthover. We spent a lot of time picking our streets last week, and even with the extra $1 million, it still wasn't enough. So we're hoping that the bids come in lower so that we can get more streets done, that the alternates that we have. So the mayor walked out, but I'm going to keep begging for money. I'm going to keep asking for more, because that's the only way we can get more streets done, is if we have more money. So I'm going to keep asking. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Mr. Lippian?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President. Engineer McKillop says talking with Engineer Schneider after the utilities meeting, and he mentioned that there's a possibility that roughly half of the East Broad Street resurfacing would be complete by the end of this year and the other half by the end of next year. He mentioned it's possible that it would start at the hospital and work its way up, but that was the prerogative of the contractor. And also it's possible to get concrete for the shared use path. Would you like to speak a little bit about what we might see this year on that project?
Well, the first thing that the contractor will probably want to do once they get the materials in hand is underground work. So we do have water line work, some storm sewer work that needs to get done. The very first thing that will probably take place is for them to look at what's needed for any traffic signal equipment and poles, because they're right there. That's a 9 to 10 month lead time issue, and we're already into April. So when we look at doing a final resurfacing, the final surface coat of the road, we don't want to do that before those traffic signals get put up in place, because we'll have to make sure that the traffic pavement markings on the road match the traffic signals and what we plan on doing with the new middle turn lane. So this year, we'll be looking at underground work, grading. It'll depend on how the contractor wants to look at the project. So most of the underground work is on one half of the project, so they could look at doing one half complete except for the surface course. They could jump back on the other half and just do the mill and fill and leave the surface course out. So yeah, at this point, we don't know. I'm pretty confident that, you know, underground work will get done.
Through you, Mr. President. Roger. So it's a fluid situation at the moment, as I understand it. And then also to add, at the next utilities meeting, I'd like to add the corner of Cornell and Fairlawn, that intersection, for the alternates list. To look at that for being done, I was told that we could get that going at the next utilities meeting. Because once we got that unexpected 26,000 each per ward, inevitably, after the evening concluded, the streets started coming to mind more and more, and that one was top of my list. So hopefully we could get that done. All right, thanks. I think that's all I had for you. Thank you, Engineer.
Mr. Oswald?
Through you, Mr. President. Ms. McKelps, I didn't mean to get you in a bad mood before you went on vacation with my email about a telephone pole and the issues we've had to try to get the old one down because the new one's already been put up. The issues with these utility companies is unbelievable. And the person that lived in front of that was doing a lot of research and homework, so I did appreciate that. It's a telephone pole on Abbey Road, and Director Lundy, and we had a conversation also. And the problem is that on a telephone pole, you may have 5 lines, Well, one company can't remove or touch any one of those lines. So you have to contact everyone, and you don't know who those lines are. And to me, a little mind like me, you would think, Ohio Edison puts OE stamp on theirs. Well, if a Windstream was on there, put a W in another one. And then when you go to that telephone pole, you would know who all them are. You just contact them. But it's not so simple like that. And then when I heard all the issues that you had with the undergrounds that you're going through, I don't think people can really fathom. And if you wonder what it could be like, look at what Ridgeville did when they had Center Ridge, and I don't know how many years that they dealt with their infrastructure. So it's a hard one. It'd be nice if we had a better relationship to get some of this stuff taken care of. So, thank you.
Mr. Lippian?
Thanks, through you, Mr. President. Inevitably, while Councilman Oswald was speaking, I remembered something else I wanted to talk to you about. Just the other day, I was on the side of Prospect by the school, and I was talking to a resident, and I've heard this from a lot of residents in the Prospect side of Eastern Heights, that train, you know, on the dividers, it's beeping in areas where it's not supposed to. I guess it woke one of my residents up at 2 a.m., and he sprang out of bed in shock, and he wanted me to ask with the dividers, if they're supposed to be doing that, and if they could not, what could we do about it with the train?
The actual quiet zone for the ag-grade crossings, railroad crossings, are not in place yet. So there's more paperwork that needs to be completed. There's signage that the railroad needs to do on their side. We have the signs on our side, but they should be covered up still. I know there's one sign that it blew off, so it is still, it says no, you know, no train horns, but, you know, the trains are allowed at this point in time to continue to blow their horns.
Thanks to you, Mr. President. Do we know when that paperwork and signage might be complete, ma'am?
That I do not know. With the first, so we have two quiet zones in Elyria. The first quiet zone was submitted back in November, end of October, early November, and that still isn't in place. So, you know, if we're 6 months out, then probably a few more months, maybe. Don't hold me to that, but.
Lippian?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, engineer. If it's possible, if your department could send me an email just so I can share that with my residents. They really don't like that train honking late at night. So thank you for giving us an update.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you, Ms. McKillips. Chief Building Official, Mr. Farkas.
Good evening, and through you, Mr. President. As many have probably noticed, the Journey Inn on Lorraine Boulevard in Bell has been boarded and secured. We had instituted a condemnation notice due to faulty electric and many other concerns. The ownership had expressed interest in repairing it. That has run its course, and unfortunately, we were left with no choice but to secure it due to life safety issues. Feeding into that is Days Inn. As the police chief mentioned, we were notified that they were on scene and had requested assistance in regards to some concerns they had noted. Myself and the fire department showed up and made an inspection. We found the place to be in a deplorable state. People were in squatting. We found a generator inside the building that was literally gas generator being utilized to power certain extension cords. We then went level by level in areas that were accessible. Once upon a time, that was a beautiful place. No longer. It has been cannibalized in many areas, most likely due in search of copper. With that, our department is currently working on a report in conjunction with fire. We are in the process of condemning that one as well. With that being said, it is not a condemnation or recommendation for demolition at this time, but at this moment, we are condemning it. There's different levels and grades of condemnation, not so severe like the Shane building, but pretty close. We want to make sure that this one is secure and boarded so that way we don't have any entry or unauthorized people inside that structure. Next, we did receive some good news from the job fair. We had one applicant apply for the plumbing inspector's position, so that is hopeful. That is great news, I'll just tell you. And actually had another person call and say they had interest that actually holds the certification, so we are moving in the right direction. Lastly, we are posting a position for a deputy housing inspector. That should be going up Tuesday, so we should be breaking in that person very soon.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Farkas? Ms. Davis?
Through you, Chair. Mr. Farkas, with the old Holiday Inn, it has a lot of windows. A lot of windows. So are you going to secure all the windows on the lower level, or just kind of give me an idea of, you don't even have to say it public because we don't want the people to know our secret. But when you get with me, when you get with me, let me know. Because I watched that place. I'm telling you, it's going to go up in flames. It is just too dangerous over there. So just let me know. We just got to get it secure.
Mr. President, through Mr. Davis,
I don't know if you want to answer that.
That was good. I don't know how I can answer that. We will secure the areas that have been vandalized, as typically the main areas that have been compromised are the front entry areas. A lot of the glass, which is tempered glass, has been shattered. We have secured that. Again, if people want to get in, they're going to get in, no matter how hard we try. Unfortunately, it is just the nature of the society we live in. Determination, if they could apply that to something else, would be very valuable. But with that being said, we have secured it, and at this moment, to my knowledge, it is secure.
Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Mr. Farkas, we've been going back and forth about the windmill pieces at the old Moen building. I am getting so many complaints from the neighbors, and rightfully so. They don't want to look out their windows or sit in their front porch and look at that. What are we doing? Help me.
No worries. Mr. President, through you to Mrs. Mitchell. We have tried a cooperative effort with the ownership, and we always try to extend the olive branch rather than coming down with the sledgehammer. And we did have communications going with the ownership. The ownership had leased it to a company who had unfortunately just did it and didn't check with the department to see if they could. We have exhausted that cooperative attempt. An order was issued to abate and put everything back to the way it was. That has been ignored. And now we're at the next step of referral to the law department, which again, once it's in the court system, we know how that story ends.
Thank you. It's not promising. Thank you.
Mr. Lippian?
Thank you, through you, Mr. President. Thanks for what you said about the trades, the opportunities with a plumber that have come open at the building department. I'm a big believer that trades are the jobs of the future, because with all of the white-collar jobs that are going to be absorbed by automation, trades are going to be more important, and you can't build a house with a computer. So I'm glad to hear that we're getting that stuff going. I had a couple questions for you, sir. Speaking on something that, well, perhaps in the same vein as what Councilman Mitchell just said, it might not be a positive response, but the Friendly's building. I just want to tell a quick story about the Friendly's building, if I may. I found a gentleman that wanted to open a business there, a very successful second store for his #1 pizza shop in his area that he'd founded. He wanted the Friendly's building. You couldn't convince him to go to Midway Mall. You couldn't convince him to go anywhere else. I want that Friendly's building. He went in and took a look at it, and he said it was the kind of place where once you walked in, when you left, you had to take a bath. He said the mold was everywhere, all over the building. There were raccoons' nests in the building. It was completely untouchable. You could barely even get up to the second floor. Even the woman who showed him the building was afraid to go up to the second floor. They're trying to sell it for $250,000, and he said you couldn't give it to him. You could not give him that building. He wouldn't take it. I don't see, just looking at it intuitively, how we're going to find a tenant for that Friendly's building. And I know I sent you an email about this, but I really seriously have to emphasize that people in my community really don't want to see that building sit there as an eyesore forever. And I don't know if anybody's ever going to be able to buy or would want to invest the money to refurbish it. Is that building something that we have to condemn?
Mr. President, through you, to Mr. Lippian. From the exterior outside appearance of the structure, we have addressed multiple concerns for peeling paint, gutters. A call came in of an unsecured door, which in fact was a realtor showing the premises to a potential buyer. The door was to be secured. The building department does not have right of entry unless granted. I cannot just do self-help, go in and confirm these concerns you're indicating. So unfortunately, unless we obtained either a warrant or rode on the coattails of the police department coming in for another concern, I am powerless to gain entry. I could send out a letter asking them to get entry. Typically, if it's as bad as you say it is, the last thing they want is a building official in there telling them what they have to fix, but I can give it a go.
Mr. Farkas, if you would do that, that'd be graciously appreciated, just to kind of put that into the system so we have record of it.
Sure.
Mr. Lippian, does you have anything else?
Yes, Mr. President, I do, and thank you, Mr. Farkas. That would be phenomenal. I know that the residents of the First Ward and the rest of Elyria would appreciate that. If you could please update me on the status of that letter. I understand the owner lives in California, and I get it. You own a building, you live on the other side of the country, and you just stopped caring about it, it looks like. But we care about it. So if you could please send that letter, or if possible, obtain a warrant, because we need to find something to do about that Friendly's building, if possible. But I want to add too, speaking of certain areas of the city, DIY condos. So when we were doing these street resurfacing projects, a lot of people were talking to me about that small connector road between McDonald's and the Safer Auto Parts. And I have looked down that road. I have not driven down it because it looks like the surface of the moon with the craters that are down that road. I think I would need new shocks and struts for my car if I even began to drive down it. Chris Parker was very helpful when we had a sinkhole at McDonald's and getting the owner to quickly fix that. Is it possible to look into who DIY Condos is and how we can emphasize to them that might be in everybody's best interest to review repairing that street, please?
Mr. Chair, through you, is this a public road or private road?
I should add, this is a private road, but I would like to find out if the building department can reach out to the owners to encourage them to try and take care of it, just like we do with residents and some of their properties that fall in disrepair.
I would first ask if this is an actual complaint that was lodged with our department. If so, we'll, of course, investigate. Again, as you indicate, a lot of these owners are out of state, and the heart is not there because they don't have to look at it every day. We'll be more than happy to investigate. I don't know what may come of it, but we can at least take an interest in it, sure.
Okay, thank you. If you can get back to me on that as well, please.
And do you have an address for that, sir?
I do, and I can get it to you.
Could you email that to me?
Yeah, just email it to him, that would be good. Thank you. Is there any further questions for Mr. Farkas? Oh, Diane? Ms. Simmons?
Through you, Mr. President. Mr. Farkas, on Fuller Road across from Wilkes Villa, that monstrosity of a building, whatever it is there anything that we can do about it? They started cleaning it up and then they stopped, and it's just an eyesore. I mean, I know you can't, I don't know what you can do, but something needs to be done.
Mr. Chair, through you to Mrs. Simmons, that particular case is a prime example of what the court process has done. It has gone through the motions time and time again, dismissed, right to refile, and unfortunately the site just decays further. Unfortunately, my budget isn't that large where I can start demolishing multiple commercial projects. As I indicated in past meetings, if as Mr. Oswald wanted to gift the department a certain amount of ARPA monies, I could use that for demolition. I could absolutely use that money towards one building. We have, unfortunately, many commercial buildings that are in a state of disrepair, and I don't have an easy answer because it gets caught up in the court process, and they have that right to due process. I could defer to the law department for further help on that, but our hands are tied as to either, if we're going to do it, we're most likely going to pay for it.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Farkas? Thank you, Mr. Farkas. Mr. Corzine, Superintendent of Wastewater.
Thank you, through you, Mr. President. I'm going to keep my comments brief here, so I'm going to read most of this. On Saturday, we received a report of about 12 trash bags that were in the Black River just downstream of the Mussey Avenue Bridge. Our collection system supervisor, Christopher Whirling, went out to check it out, see what could be done. The river was fortunately lower, so he determined that with the use of waders, his crew could get in there and remove the bags. So collection system employees, Alexander Deaton, Tyler Huge, and Stephen Lesh, supervised by Mr. Whirling, donned the waders and removed the bags. It was determined that it was brush, sticks, twigs, that kind of stuff that were in the bags. Knowing that there was rain coming, they really wanted to get those bags out of the water because we had no idea what was really in there until they got the bags out. So I just wanted to state that, we're really blessed to have a team of such dedicated employees who make themselves available and are willing to do such things to protect public health and the environment. And also, as a public service announcement, since the rains are coming, we're in spring, heading towards summer. For residents who live along the river banks, if they can make sure that anything that they have stowed or stored anywhere that's close to the banks, as the rains come and the waters rise, a lot of those things are actually picked up by the water and they end up floating down the river. You'd be amazed what the collection of stuff that we get at the wastewater plant all the way down that far down the river when the river waters do rise. So if they can just kind of stow that stuff away from the bank so that it doesn't get caught up in the waters, that'd be awesome. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Corzine? Mr. Lippian?
Through you, Mr. President. Thank you. Mr. Corzine, how's the procedure going for putting in the mail the reminder that residents can opt in or apply for the lateral line program there that we have to help get some relief to the flooding in the area, especially as the springtime rolls into fervor?
Yes, through you, Mr. President, that's in progress. I am pretty much trying to wrap up the quarry issue, so I am working on that at the same time. So hopefully we'll get something out in the utility bill very soon with a number of announcements such as that.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Corzine.
Thank you.
Parks Department, Ms. Reardon.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Just a few notes. We are hiring, still hiring, will be hiring lifeguards, concessions, swim instructors, pool managers, camp counselors. So if anybody's interested, we did get what we believe to be a few applicants from the job fair on Friday, so we'll be following up with them this week, so that's exciting. A few project updates. North Park parking lot paving is just about complete. We have some side work to do, some finish work, but that will be completed hopefully by the end of this week. The West Park Trail has been started, which we've been waiting, I think, a year and a half to say that. So that's actually very exciting, and they're moving right along over there. So they will, the timeline that they've given us, and this is very weather dependent. I know we have some rain over the next week and a half or so, but they'll do the trail, then they will move to the parking lot off of Lowell Street, and then they will move to the pickleball court. And then from there, that same contractor will go over to Washington Village and do that project. And then we'll complete all of them with like a punch list thing. So ideally, don't hold me to this, but ideally we would like to be finished with all of that beginning of June, is their timeline that they have given us. So that is very exciting. Registration for swim lessons is going to begin May 2nd, so kind of keep that for session 1 in mind. May 20th, Saturday, is Lorain County Beautification Day, so I ask if you guys are out and about around your ward and you see a specific project that you would maybe like to see, and this goes to the residents also, please give us a call. We'll add it to the list. And then we're also looking for volunteers for that day to do some of these cleanup projects around town. The last thing that I'll leave you with, we're starting this year, is we're going to do Food Truck Thursdays downtown in the square. So every Thursday afternoon, starting May 4th, we'll have a food truck down there for people to enjoy during the lunchtime. And any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Reardon? Mr. Tolet?
Not a question, but a comment, through you, Mr. President. I have to give a congratulations to Ms. Reardon, Mr. Horwedel, for the opening of the dog park this weekend. It was absolutely amazing. I couldn't believe the turnout. But the really big congratulation goes to the residents that pushed for this. I was blown away at the attendance and how good it went. And so congratulations to you and your staff and to the residents for getting that through. Very, very exciting. It was fun.
Thank you.
Ms. Mitchell?
Briefly, thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Carrie, thank you so much. We have waited on the trail at West Park for longer than I care to say, and the sidewalk at Washington Park. So thank you. Thank you very much, you and your team. I appreciate it. And I'll stop bugging you.
No, that's okay. Through you, President, if I may add, those are both grant projects, so I will say that that has been part of the delay, is just waiting for the paperwork and the monies to be allocated. So unfortunately, with, especially that project at West is a pretty big project. So, but we're exciting, and, you know, I know we're looking to do some sort of ribbon cutting or open house when that, and just as far as the dog park goes, that was an open house, and I know we've been kind of putting that together in pieces, and we are going to try to add some shade to that, but it's exciting, and actually we got a lot of compliments of how now people don't have to go to Avon to use their dog park, so they were very excited to have it there. So thank you for the support for that.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Reardon. I think that's about it. I think that was good conversation tonight from our department heads and giving this the information and asking questions. I would just, hope that we could, with our council members, to kind of forward those emails to them so that they would have this information in front of them, and maybe those are additional comments or conversations to be had just to get the status of things. So very good conversation with that tonight. President's remonstrances. President's referrals and remonstrances. Item number 1, community development. Item number 2, community development. Item number 3, community development. Item number 4, community development planning commission. Item number 5, finance. Item number 6, finance. Item number 7, finance. Item number 8, finance. Item number 9, finance. Item number 10, Finance and Utilities. Item number 11, Finance and Utilities. Item number 12, Finance and Utilities. Item number 13, Finance and Utilities. Items 14 through 18 received and placed on file in the clerk's office. Petitions and remonstrances from the lobby.
We have a few. Larry Klipstein, 919 Oakwood Drive, self, various items.
Larry Klipstein, 959 Oakwood Drive, Ohio. Good evening, Council, President, Mayor. Back to your NOPEC, you can't go on apples to apples and find 3-year deals because I got locked into 3 years of the same rate. It's a great site to go to, so some offer 3 years. I'd like the mayor, what he said about all the different programs, that he is heading the right way with a lot of these funds need to be put towards what the people need and not what department needs. A lot of this ARPA money should be dedicated to improving the people's lives in Elyria. And I know we need fire trucks and garbage trucks, but I can't drive either one of those. I can't go to a park. I can't go to some kind of center or some kind of education program that's provided by the city. One thing is, Councilman Mitchell did help me on this, is the speeding on Oakwood Drive where I live. We have people, we have school buses even, we have FedEx trucks, we have UPS. We have motorcycles drag racing down Oakwood Drive, some going 50, 60 miles an hour. We asked her about putting in rubber strips. The engineering department said, you can't put those in because they make too much noise. Well, they won't make noise because they slow down to go over them. I would like to ask for, they did increase police patrols, but unless you're driving by one going 70 miles an hour, you're not going to catch anybody. So unless you have some kind of unmarked cars stationed on the street and watch them as they go by and pick them up, or even one of those speed limit signs like they have on North Abbey that show the speed as they go by, maybe that will help deter some of the things. But right now, I mean, there's kids on that street now. A lot of families moved in. They're in the street with their bicycles. I don't want to see any kid get hurt, and then operations take afterwards to do something. Also, I mean, we need to listen to the citizens' ideas and their feedbacks. The infrastructure meeting last year we had was a very beneficial one. We have a couple of council people there. Ideas like your street departments. Okay, many months ago I presented a different kind of approach to street repairs and pavement. All the people at the infrastructure meeting asked me, why don't we do it that way, because it's a better idea. I said, I don't know, go ask your council, because they've done the same thing for decades. The biggest thing in Elyria seems to be street repairs all the time. We've been doing this for the past 50 years the same way. It's time to look at alternative measures and just going by ward, do sections of the city and not just a ward. Also, I'd like to see some of the ARPA money used for a crisis center. The youth in this city, also the guns, the drugs, the violence, these kids need someone to go talk to and somewhere to go that's open freely to them. They're not judged, they're not questioned, but have somewhere to go. They can talk to someone, have a meal, play a game of pool or basketball or something, and just relax and get into their minds of what's going on in their system. One told me one time, when I asked him, I said, why did you do certain things? He said, because no one else cares that I do them. So why should I care what I do? So we have to show the youth of Elyria that we actually do care for their future and set up some kind of programs and a place they can go, because a lot of them don't have a home life. We know that. We can talk about it. We can just look over it. You can't appropriate enough money. You need to have actual action and people that care. I'd like also to comment on all the departments that gave a good briefing this morning. I like to see that. I hate coming to meetings where there's no report from departments, because they proved tonight there's a lot going on in the city and there's a lot to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clipstein.
Nita Stevens, 836 Sandalwood, Watch Me Grow and Learn Center.
Ms. Stevens, please state your name and address for the record.
Nita Stevens, 836 Sandalwood Drive, Elyria. I know I have a meeting scheduled May 1st. Okay. I know I have a meeting scheduled May 1st, but I was talking to my councilman, Jack Sear. He asked me a good question, and that was the safety, the fire, you know, how do we do our fire and things? So, I just want to touch base real quick. We do a fire inspection, a fire review every month. We do a fire drill every month. With each one I have on my list. Like if we do it in the morning, we do it in the afternoon, we do it at night. So we do have fire drills once a month. I just wanted to bring that up. And actually, I'm asking for a conditional grant. Once I get it, if I get approved, but once I get it, we also got to have a fire inspection from the fire department. They come in and make sure we have ways out, emergency, and I'm glad he brought that up, and we have smoke detectors on every level, whether they're up there or not. At night, we're on the same level. So, like, we're on one level. If they stay overnight, I just wanted to bring that up. We're on one level. So, as the fire department come in and they see that we have our safety and, requirements, I just wanted to let y'all know about that part, because I was also told, which he brought up, not everybody was on each committee that I have discussed certain things, so he didn't know that part. So I know I have more to discuss May 1st. I just wanted to bring that small point up.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Stevens.
Wayne Prout, 525 Georgetown, requests the mayor's office, and city council do not issue a proclamation endorsing Pride Month, June of this year.
Please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Okay.
excuse me. My name is Wayne Pretty. I live at 525 Georgetown Avenue in Elyria. I am here tonight to make a request. It's 2 weeks plus the month of May until the 1st of June, and that is the start of what is known as Pride Month. I would like to ask the mayor, the office of the mayor, and this city council to not, repeat, not issue any proclamation supporting or acknowledging Pride Month. I would like you to stay neutral. Now, why am I making this request? I am tired. I am tired of division. I'm tired of the culture wars. I'm tired of an unending, unrelenting push to endorse, affirm the alphabet community's agenda. I am tired of my language being commandeered. Really, truly, folks, they, them pronouns for an individual. I am tired that there is no compromise. Now, this one may seem surprising to you. I am tired of having a fear of my government. Most people in it, I would give odds and I would lay a wager that no one in this room except someone associated with diversity, equity, and inclusion knows of this document. Its title is National Strategy on Gender Equity and Equality, issued October 22, 2021 by the Biden administration. It is 35 pages of single-spaced text. Now, why do I have a fear? There is a statement on page 8. It's a 3-word phrase, whole of government. Even talking to you now, I tremble. Think of it, folks. 7 to 10% of the population is moving the government. Now, I would like to ask, my time is going to be up, I would just like to ask you to push back. When you're, not if, but when you are approached, please just say no, we're staying neutral. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
That's all the petitions from the lobby.
Petitions and remonstrances from council members.
There are none.
Reports of standing and special committees.
There are none.
Resolutions first reading.
Sponsored by Finance. A resolution approving a list submitted by the Safety Service Director for the collection of delinquent, inactive utility accounts and directing the Clerk of Council to certify said accounts to the Lorraine County Auditor.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this resolution be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second by Mr. Snyder. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Resolution 2023-11. That's all the resolutions first reading.
Resolution second reading.
There are none.
Resolutions third reading.
There are none.
Ordinances first reading.
Sponsored by Community Development. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an annexation agreement with Carlisle Township.
Mr. Callahan.
Mr. President, I move that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-43. Sponsored by Community Development and Finance. An ordinance authorizing the city of Elyria to make a funding contribution in the amount of $100,000 to support the Elyria Community Partnership, a community development corporation.
Mr. Callahan?
Mr. President, I move that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second. Second by Mr. Center. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-44. Sponsored by Finance, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation, ODOT, for the purchase of road salt and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-45. Sponsored by Finance, an ordinance providing for the issuance of sale of $330,000 of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of acquiring a pumper fire truck and appurtenance equipment for the use by the city fire department.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second. Second by Mr. Snare. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-46. Sponsored by Finance. An ordinance providing for the issuance of sale of $300,000 of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of acquiring a truck for collection and transportation of solid waste and appurtenant equipment for the use of the city sanitation department.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-47. Sponsored by Finance, an ordinance providing for the issuance of sale of $5.2 million of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying a portion of the cost of construction of the Chestnut Commons Connector project, including constructing and reconstructing streets, constructing sidewalks, water lines, and related water supply, sanitary sewers and related sanitary facilities, storm sewers and related drainage facilities, installing lighting, signage, and traffic signalization, and relocating existing utilities as necessary.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second. Second by Mr. Snare. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-48. Sponsored by Finance. An ordinance authorizing the Finance Director to create a new special revenue fund.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-49. Sponsored by Finance, an ordinance authorizing the Finance Director to transfer funds to specified accounts.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-50. Sponsored by Finance, an ordinance amending ordinance 2022-182, known as the salary ordinance, to revise the wages of certain building department positions and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Mr. Snyder. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-51. Sponsored by Finance and Utilities. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a change order number 1 with Extreme Excavating LLC for the 2022-2023 sanitary and storm sewer repairs and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-52. Sponsored by Finance and Utilities. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to apply for and, if offered, accepting funding through the Division of Environmental and Financial Assistance, DEFA, through the Ohio EPA for the renovation and expansion of the water pumping plant and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-53. Sponsored by Utilities and Finance. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the West Avenue water line replacement.
Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Ms. Simmons. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Oh, well,
Sorry.
that's okay. Mr. Lippian?
Through you, Mr. President, thank you. Just confirming with the Utilities Chairwoman that we can, as discussed, get the intersection of Cornell and Fairlawn on there at the next Utilities meeting.
I don't know this.
Mr. Lippian, excuse me, Mr. President, through you, that's not what this is.
Pardon me?
The water line.
Oh, well, pardon me, I was getting ahead of myself. Let's continue.
Thank you.
No
Call
further
for the
discussion.
question.
So there was a motion and questions have been called. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-54. Sponsored by Utilities and Finance. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an amendment, number 1, to the professional services agreement with Black and Veatch Management Consulting LLC and declaring an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell?
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency. Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-55. Sponsored by Utilities, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the 2023 street resurfacing project and declare an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Simmons.
Yes.
Is there discussion? Mr. Lippian?
Thank you, through you, Mr. President. Yes, there is some discussion. Now we've arrived at it. Yes, I would like to just get confirmation, like we discussed, that I don't need to make an amendment today, that we can discuss, that we can get Cornell and Fairlawn intersection on there at the next utilities meeting, just confirming that.
Confirmed.
It's confirmed. Is
Thank
there
you,
any
ma'am.
further discussion?
Call for the question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-56. That's all ordinances first reading.
Ordinance's second reading.
Sponsored by Community Development, an ordinance granting a conditional use permit pursuant to Chapter 1135 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Elyria, Ohio, to Anita Stevens for Type A in-home child care at real property located at 836 Sandalwood Drive, Elyria, Ohio.
I declare this ordinance has had its second reading. Public hearing is scheduled for May 1st, 2023.
That's all the ordinances second reading.
Ordinance's third reading.
There are none.
Committee calls.
Community Development, request the Law Director, Safety Service Director, Building Inspector, and Engineer on Monday, 4/24, 6 p.m. All items referred. Joint CD Finance, request the Mayor, Law Director, Finance Director, and Safety Service Director, and Engineer on Monday, 4/24, immediately following Community Development meeting. Finance, request the Mayor, Law Director, Finance Director, Safety Service Director, and Engineer on Monday, 4/24, immediately following the joint meeting. Utilities, Safety, Environment, request Law Director, Safety Service Director, and Engineer on Wednesday, 5/10, beginning at 6 p.m., all items referred. And Strategic Planning, request the Mayor, Safety Service Director, Finance Director, and Law Director on Monday, 5/1, 7 p.m., all items referred.
Okay. Miscellaneous and unfinished business. Mr. Lippian.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President. Just a response to an earlier comment from the President about making sure we send initial emails to the departments. Like the Assistant Law Director said for himself, is true also for me. I like to be thorough. I sent lots of emails to the department heads, but if I don't receive a reply or if I receive an unsatisfactory reply, I will bring it to council. I did ask an email question about DIY condos, no response. Friendlies, unsatisfactory response. Cornell and Fairlawn, ditto. Traffic patrol cars, something that I began talking about with the police chief a long time ago, and many others. I do want to also give some praise. Mr. Corzan, out of all the department heads, is the best with responses to anybody's emails. He's very detailed, very timely, and extraordinary. I'm not perfect. I miss an email too, but I am persistent. They do pay us to do this, so I'm just trying to earn my paycheck. And speaking of, I would like to talk about people who definitely earn their paycheck, our police and fire. We do have issue 8 on the horizon, not a tax increase, funding for our police forces to keep Elyria safe, enabling fire and EMS emergency response, keeping our parks beautiful, supporting exceptional city services. I do hope that the great residents of Elyria will take a look at this. I know we have one council meeting still anon before the election, I believe, but it's important to make sure that everybody knows I support this issue, and I will be following that up with a letter to the editor, and I hope that you will too.
Very good. Anything else, miscellaneous or unfinished business?
Seeing none.
No, I got one thing.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Sorry, Mayor.
I'm sorry. And I know it's been a long night, but I wouldn't be myself if I didn't reply to the residents' comment around the Pride Month piece. Unfortunately, he's not here anymore, but a couple things come to mind. You know, it's easy to have that sort of stance when you don't have a family or friend or you're not directly a part of that community or see yourself as lesbian or gay or bi or trans or questioning or queer. And I think our job as a government, I don't think he should fear us. I don't think any resident should be fearing their government. I think they should question us. They should challenge us. But if there's a marginalized group in our city who's just asking to be affirmed and be respected and acknowledged, I don't think we should shy away from that. And I'm not going to be neutral on affirming individuals in our city. So There's two parts to it. I think, one is I'm trying to make sure people don't buy into this narrative of fearing your government. I think that's a part of the reason why we have these crazy laws that get passed around guns, because there's this constant thing about fearing your government. Challenge us, question us, but you fear God. You don't need to fear government. But the real piece around, I know what it's like to be a part of a marginalized group, and when you get acknowledged and affirmed, how people feel threatened by that. And I think that it's important that we can acknowledge people who are part of this community without going too far and compromising who we are as individuals. But I do condemn any sort of comments that want to dehumanize individuals and not affirm them as humans and as our residents in the city of Elyria. So that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. If there's no further business,
I'll make a motion to adjourn. Well said, Nick.
Second.
Call for the question.
there's been a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Is there any further? Oh, did you want to say something? I'm sorry, Jack, did you want to say?
No, I made a second, whatever.
Okay. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. This meeting's adjourned.